Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar about the 2025 Invasive Species Scavenger Hunt Garden Escapees Edition. My name is Amy Jewett. I am the Pennsylvania iMapInvasives Program Coordinator at the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy and Pennsylvania Natural Heritage Program. So this year for our scavenger hunt event, we'll be talking about ornamental invasive plants that may have escaped into natural areas, and participants can expect to contribute important information to iMapInvasives when you are finding these species in the landscape. So I just want to give an overview for this year's event. So we've been hosting this event for 6 years now. Began in 2020, so this is our 6th year. This year, the event will be held August 1st through 31st, so the whole month of August. Each year, our scavenger hunt attracts participation from a wide variety of people, including natural resource professionals, educators, community scientists, and others. Individuals can vary by age and botanical skill level, but it's important to note that anyone with an interest in this event is invited to participate. During the month of August, participants are encouraged to get outside and search anywhere in Pennsylvania for each of the 5 invasive species on this year's scavenger hunt checklist. Participant findings, including both presence and not detected information, should be reported directly to iMapInvasives via our mobile app, Survey 123 app, or the online database. A primary goal of this year's scavenger hunt is to discover invasive plants that may have escaped from cultivation into nearby natural areas. And so cultivated settings may include yards and gardens, neighborhood settings, school grounds, and commercial spaces such as gas stations and store parking lots. Participants are advised not to conduct their searches in these areas, even if target species are present there. When conducting surveys, participants should visit public spaces, such as parks, state forests, game lands, etc., to conduct their surveys in. And searches in multiple locations is encouraged. Surveys on private lands are acceptable as long as landowner permission is obtained. Before conducting their searches, participants should thoroughly review information provided in the species checklist portion of this guide. 5 species were chosen for the 2025 Invasive Species Scavenger Hunt. They include burning bush, Japanese spiraea, Bishop's goutweed, garden loosestrife, and Ravenna grass. And just as a note, anywhere in this story map that you see a dotted underline underneath a word, it is indicating a hyperlink. So it's either taking you to an external resource or another location in this guide, in this story map. So in this case, each of those species is linked to a specific area in this guide where you can learn more about it. So later on, as you're perusing this story map, just keep that in mind. The first species that we will highlight is burning bush. And so here's some images of that species. If you haven't seen it before or just getting familiar with it, these are good references to have. So as a background on burning bush, the scientific name for this species is Euonymus elatus. It's known by other common names, including winged euonymus and winged spindletree. So burning bush is a very popular landscape shrub, even after its invasive habit became known. It was originally introduced from Asia in the mid-1800s and has an ability to invade natural areas, which was first documented in the 1970s. It has a very attractive fall color and eye-catching fruit, which is unique among other shrubs. And because of this, homeowners can be reluctant to remove burning bush from their yards. So information from the DCNR states that though not as aggressive as other invasive shrubs, burning bush's ability to grow under a mature canopy and its prolific fruiting make it a shrub of enough concern to be ranked a significant threat by the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. So as we know, this is a problematic species in our natural areas. Burning bush can easily outcompete native plants with its large, dense silhouette. It lacks pests and is tolerant of deep shade, and it can force itself into moist forested sites, which creates thickets that displace our native species. This displacement has negative consequences for both aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems. It's also important to note burning bush is classified as a Pennsylvania noxious weed and cannot be sold, transported, planted, or otherwise propagated in the Commonwealth. When you're searching for burning bush in the landscape, please keep in mind these identification tips. You'll be looking for corky wings that are usually present on the twigs and branches, which you can see here in this image. Leaves that are opposite, elliptic, sometimes oblong, and green or red in color. In August, there will often be fruits present that are either green and unripe or ripen to a red-orange color. Additional identification tips are available from these resources that are shown here in the story map, so please check those out as you have the time to. Burning bush has a tolerance of deep shade, which is at the core of its success in invading woodlands. So though it can also grow in full or partial sun, it does thrive in forest interiors where there's less competition, excuse me, from other invasive shrubs. Burning bush can be found growing on a wide range of sites, though it is often found not far from a source of seed in a landscaped setting. When you're searching for burning bush, please be aware of similar look-alike species that may also be present in the landscape. We have several native euonymus species, such as those that are listed here, all that actually lack the corky wings of invasive burning bush. So that is one way to tell them apart. Also, young sweet gum trees can also have winged twigs. However, its leaves are star-shaped, contain 5 lobes, and do not possess the vibrant fall color that burning bush has. So here's a look at some of those native or just look-alike species to keep in mind when you're searching for burning bush in the landscape. There is a list here of some news media and videos to check out as you are going through this story map and learning more about burning bush. So things that were included in some newspapers and other articles that were written by conservation-based organizations talking about the harm that burning bush can cause. So please check those out when you get the chance. As far as its status in Pennsylvania, burning bush is considered a common invasive species. Occurrences of it in the landscape are frequent, with documented findings in over 1/3 of Pennsylvania counties. And so here's a look at a distribution map that we have available from iMapInvasives, which is showcasing the confirmed occurrences that we have for this species so far. If you have burning bush in your yard or garden, please consider replacing it with a native alternative. A wide variety of native shrubs can provide beauty and wildlife value to your landscape. And so here's a short list of some native alternatives to keep in mind for that purpose. So our next species that we'll talk about is Japanese spiraea. And here's some images of that species if you are not already familiar with it. The scientific name for Japanese spiraea is Spiraea japonica. It's known by other common names, including Japanese meadowsweet and Korean spiraea. Japanese spiraea was introduced into the U.S. as an ornamental plant around 1870 and 1880 due to its showy, rosy pink to carmine colored flowers. It's naturally variable in form, and many varieties are still available for purchase in the horticultural trade. Japanese spiraea grows rapidly and can quickly take over disturbed areas. It can form dense stands and can outcompete and displace many native woody and herbaceous plants and impedes the growth of native seedlings. It also establishes a seed bank that can last many years in the soil, which makes future restoration efforts difficult for this species. So lots of reasons why Japanese spiraea is a problematic species in our natural areas. When you're looking for Japanese spiraea in the landscape, please keep in mind these distinguishing characteristics that are specific to this species. It is a shrub that is usually 4 to 6 feet tall. Its stems are erect and slender. Leaves are alternately arranged, toothed, ovate, with deep-set arching veins. The inflorescences are flat-topped with numerous small pink flowers. And by August, some of its flowers will still be blooming, while others will already be transitioning over to fruit, which are first green and then turn brown when they ripen. So here's an image of the flowers and also the fruits as a reference. Additional identification tips are available from additional resources that are listed here, so please check those out. So Japanese spiraea prefers to be in areas where full sun or also partial shade is available. It is adaptable to a wide range of soil conditions. Commonly found in disturbed areas, such as along streams and rivers, forest edges, roadsides, successional fields, and power line rights of way. Be aware of other look-alike species when surveying for Japanese spiraea in the landscape. There are others that may look similar in appearance. So it can be confused with some of our native spireas, including steeplebush and white meadowsweet. Also, a few non-native and invasive species can also look very similar. They include Thunberg's meadowsweet and bridal wreath spirea. So here's a look at those look-alike species for your reference. Here's a list of some videos and news media to take a look at. Again, this is a species that is very commonly included in yards and gardens. And these links will talk about information of why this is a species that you really don't want to have planted at your home. So check those out. So its status in Pennsylvania, Japanese spiraea is an emerging invasive species. So occurrences of it have been detected in parts of our state, but it is not yet established statewide. So here's information that we have so far in iMapInvasives for where this species has been found. If you have Japanese spiraea in your yard or garden, again, please consider replacing it with a native alternative. There is a wide variety of other shrubs available that can provide beauty and wildlife value to your landscape. And so here's a list of those species to consider. The next species we'll talk about is Bishop's goutweed. Here's a look at what that species looks like if you are not already familiar with it. The scientific name for Bishop's goutweed is Agapodium podagraria. Other common names include goutweed, ground elder, English masterwort, aceweed, dog elder, and snow on the mountain. Bishop's goutweed was brought to North America as an ornamental by early European settlers, and by 1863 it was well established in the United States and is utilized as a low-maintenance ground cover. It is a problem, however, in our natural areas. It is aggressive, can form dense, impenetrable patches that displace native plants and greatly reduce ground layer species diversity. Its colonies also inhibit the establishment of native tree seedlings, which is very harmful to forest regeneration. It's highly shade tolerant and capable of invading closed canopy forests. A quote that I found from CBC News that I wanted to include here says, "The aggressive ground cover goutweed is so resistant to removal, it's been called the cockroach of the botanical world." So a very interesting perspective to have on this species. When you're looking for Bishop's goutweed in the landscape, keep in mind these identification tips. You're looking for a plant that is herbaceous and creates clonal colonies via rhizomes with low-growing carpeting leaves. Its leaves are compound, split into 3 segments, and then each segment is then split again into another 2 to 3 segments. Its leaf margins are serrate, and the leaves are sometimes variegated. And in August, its flowers, which are arranged in flat top clusters, have typically transitioned over to fruits, which are brown when ripened. Rarely will goutweed still have white flowers present late into the year, and it's not always guaranteed to find flower stalks in every patch of goutweed. Additional identification tips are available, so please check those out as listed here in the story map. Goutweed is a species that you can often find in deciduous and carnivorous forests. It generally does best in moist soil and light shade, but it is versatile and shade tolerant. It is often found in disturbed habitats such as logged forests and abandoned fields, but it can also be found in areas such as floodplains. Please be aware of lookalikes when you're surveying for goutweed in the landscape. Here's a short list of species that can look very similar, including Queen Anne's lace, honewort, golden Alexanders, wild chervil, and anise root. And so here's a look at some of those lookalike species for your reference. Here's a list of some videos and news media to check out. Again, this is a species that can often be found in yards and gardens, and so it's something that you really don't want there. And so these resources are talking a little bit more about why it can be so aggressive and not a good choice to include in cultivation. Its status in Pennsylvania, Bishop's goutweed is a common invader. Occurrences of it in the landscape are frequent, with findings documented in over 1/3 of Pennsylvania counties. So you can see here the distribution map that we have for goutweed from iMapInvasives. If you have this species in your yard or garden, again, please consider replacing it with a native alternative. There's a wide variety of species of ground covers that are native that can provide that beauty and wildlife value to your landscape. So these are some of those species that you can consider for that purpose. Our next species that we will talk about is garden loosestrife. So garden loosestrife, scientific name for it is Lysimachia vulgaris. Other common names that it can be known by are yellow loosestrife and garden yellow loosestrife. It was introduced as a garden ornamental worldwide and appears to be preferring northern temperate regions where it can escape into surrounding native ecosystems. A quote from Minnesota Wildflowers says, "In the slow process of recognizing the ecological threat from the invasive potential of any naturalizing garden species, garden loosestrife is being added to invasive species lists in both the Northwest and the Northeast United States. This is one to pay attention to." As we know, this is a problematic species. It presents similar threats as the serious invasive purple loosestrife, which some of you may already be familiar with. Its rhizomes spread rapidly, and though populations have not yet reached the numbers that purple loosestrife has, it really does have the potential to do so. The seeds of garden loosestrife can remain viable in the soil for up to 20 years. It has been banned from sale in Connecticut and also Washington State. In Washington State, garden loosestrife has displaced native vegetation in wetlands and along stream banks and has reduced habitat for waterfowl and fish. When you're looking for garden loosestrife in the landscape, keep in mind these distinguishing characteristics. You'll be looking for a plant that has upright stems. The leaves are simple, entire, and oppositely arranged, sometimes in whorls of 3 or more. Flowers are yellow in color, sometimes with a reddish orange color in the center, 5-petaled, and in spikes or clusters at the tip of the stem. In August, garden loosestrife usually starts to transition from flowers to fruits, which will appear green and somewhat hairy when unripe, and all parts are moderately pubescent. Additional identification tips are available from several resources that are listed here, so please check those out. As far as where it likes to be, garden loosestrife prefers moist soil and will invade fens, wet woods, lake shores, rocky river shores, and riparian zones. Again, please be aware of similar lookalike species when you're surveying for this species in the landscape. So species including large yellow loosestrife, world yellow loosestrife, fringed loosestrife, lance-leaved loosestrife, and creeping jenny are all species that can look very similar, primarily because of the yellow flowers that they produce. One species that is quite different just because of its growth habit is creeping jenny. So even though you can see here on the right that this plant has yellow flowers, it typically is growing very close to the ground and not as tall and erect as garden loosestrife would be. So again, keep those lookalike species in mind when you're searching for garden loosestrife. An article that I found from Purdue University is listed here talking about why garden loosestrife can be a less than desirable species to have in your yard or garden. In Pennsylvania, garden loosestrife is considered an emerging invasive species. Occurrences of it have been detected in parts of the state, but it is not yet established statewide. So here's a distribution map for that species that is being sourced from iMapInvasives. So if you have garden loosestrife in your yard or garden, or you know someone who does, please consider replacing it with a native alternative or encouraging those that you know to do the same. We do have a wide variety of native plants that can provide beauty and wildlife. And just like garden loosestrife, which prefers to have its feet wet, these species, are most of them anyway, also prefer to be in moist areas. Finally, our last species we'll highlight today that's part of our scavenger hunt this year is Ravenna grass. So here's a look at what that species looks like. The scientific name for Ravenna grass is Tripodium ravennae. It can be known by other common names, including plume grass, elephant grass, Italian sugar cane, giant cane, and hardy pampas grass. It is an emerging invasive species that has been in the horticultural trade since at least 1921. It is a tall bunch grass prized by gardeners for its dramatic display, sustained throughout all 4 seasons. However, it is a problem in our natural areas and can establish itself with little disturbance and put intact plant communities at risk. It can form impenetrable monocultures, growing out from beneath other vegetation before outcompeting the native plant community. Established stands can bring fire into riparian zones and anchor soils that are normally subject to shifting. Ravenna grass can also act as a physical barrier to stream flow. Also important to note, Ravenna grass is classified as a Pennsylvania noxious weed, and it therefore cannot be sold, transported, planted, or otherwise propagated in the Commonwealth. So when you're looking for Ravenna grass in the landscape, keep in mind these identification tips. You're looking for a plant that's very tall, has flowering stalks that are 10 or more feet in height. Its basal leaves, which are 6 or more in number, in bunches at the base of the flower stem. The leaves are weakly serrated, hairy at the base, and have a thick white vein on the underside. Seeds have feathery white plumage in a spike at the end of the stem, which is seen here in this image. And in August, Ravenna grass may still be flowering and not yet producing seeds. Its flower color can range quite widely from brown to copper to cream, tan, silver, gray, white, red, purple, or lavender. There are additional identification tips that are available from the sources that are listed here in the story map, so please check those out. As far as where to find it in the landscape, Ravenna grass is a specialist of moist soils and harsh substrates such as gravel banks. Riparian zones, seeps, wetland edges, and floodplains are also all areas where you could potentially find this species. Of note, it is relatively cold tolerant and can withstand regular freezes. Be aware of other species that might look like Ravenna grass when you're out searching for it. Due to its larger size, Ravenna grass doesn't resemble any United States natives, but it can be confused with species we have that are non-native in our landscape, including the invasive common reed, also known as Phragmites, pampas grass, and ciabatta grass. And here's a look at those species for your reference, those look-alike species. So here's a list of some videos and news media to check out. This was a species that was not too long ago added to our Pennsylvania noxious weed list. And so some of those resources are discussing that here. Also, again, just not one that you want to have in your landscape and how to control it. So again, check those out as you have the opportunity to do so. In Pennsylvania, Ravenna grass is considered an emerging invasive species, so occurrences of it have been detected in parts of Pennsylvania, but it is not yet established statewide. So here's a distribution map that we have available from iMapInvasives that's showing the occurrences of this species so far that we know of. If you have this species in your yard or garden, just like all the other ones that we've mentioned so far, please consider replacing it with a native alternative. Again, because there's no plant that's indigenous to the United States that can match the exact look of Ravenna grass, you won't necessarily get that same look and feel, but there are many good native alternative grasses to choose from that do maintain a really beautiful visual display. And so here's that list of native species to keep in mind for that purpose. Okay, so that wraps up our species list for this year's scavenger hunt event. Now I'd like to transition over into talking about how to report your findings as a participant. So scavenger hunt participants can increase the amount of invasive species data that we have available in iMapInvasives. And that helps to do multiple things, including painting a more thorough picture of local and statewide distributions of invasive species, aids natural resource professionals in prioritizing management efforts, and informing land managers of emerging invaders that might require quick management action. Also, another large goal of hosting this event at all is to help participants to really hone and develop their ability to not only identify invasive species that they might not be familiar with, but also to just recognize the proliferation of common invasive species that we have throughout our landscape in Pennsylvania, and also be encouraged to learn about and look for lesser known emerging invasive species. So in order to report your findings to iMapInvasives as part of the scavenger hunt this year, the first thing you'll need to do is to request an iMapInvasives account. And this is very easy to do. They're free to obtain. So first you'll need to go to our program's website at paimapinvasives.org. At the top of the page, you'll see an area that says register. If you click on that, you will see a sign-up form that looks like this. So complete that form, and afterwards you'll receive an email that confirms the creation of your new account. The next thing you'll want to do after creating a login account is to join the project for this year's event. So you'll want to log into the iMapInvasives online database and request to join that project, after which an administrator will approve your request and let you know that you're a member of the project via email. Once you are part of the project, that is when you can begin your surveys, again at the beginning of August. So here's just some screenshots showing you that process of how to request to become a member of the project. So if you're logged into iMapInvasives online, in the upper left corner main menu, one of the options says projects. So if you access that, you'll see a page that looks like this, where it lists all of the projects. If you use the search bar to search specifically for the Invasive Species Scavenger Hunt 2025 project, that should pop up at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that, that will then take you to a page that looks like this, specifically for this project. And from there, you can click on where it says request to join project. Once you do that, and an email will be sent to myself and other iMapInvasives administrators, and one of us will approve your request and let you know that via email that you are added as a member. Also of note, if you are an existing iMapInvasives user, you may already have been added to the Invasive Species Scavenger Hunt project by an administrator. So to find out if you've already been added, all you need to do is access the project's profile page in the online database and check the membership list to see if your name is on there. So once you've done those two things, once you request a login account and join the project, you'll be ready to start doing your surveys and then recording your data in iMapInvasives. Participants should plan to report their survey findings to iMapInvasives in the form of either presence or not detected findings. And submissions can be made using a mobile device, laptop, or desktop computer. Important to note, all presence reports must include at least one photo of the observed species. So this table outlines comparisons between the three different options for how you can report data to iMapInvasives, either through the online database, the classic mobile app, or the Survey123 app. The apps can be used without a Wi-Fi connection if they're already installed or in your device, so that makes it very easy, especially if you're in more of a remote location. The one thing I will mention, as far as the mobile app is concerned, the classic mobile app for iMapInvasives, it only allows you to include one photo per record that you create. So this is somewhat of a limitation, but not necessarily a reason not to use the app. It's just something to keep in mind. The online database and Survey123 app both allow you to include up to 5 images per record. So they allow you to capture a bit more as far as the photos are concerned. So go ahead and choose, when you're ready to start your surveys, choose what you want to be your preferred method for entering information into iMapInvasives. And then if you're not already familiar with how to enter data into iMapInvasives, we do have several video tutorials that are available online. and which are embedded here in the story map that highlight how to enter data into iMapInvasives via one of those options that was just outlined above. So here's a video that talks about the classic iMap mobile app, the Survey 123 app, and also the online database. Each of these are not that long, so you can watch them fairly quickly, and it will give you an overview of how to enter that information. So check those out, please. Also of note, photography is very important. Good photography is very important as part of this event. So when photographing your invasive species findings, please remember the following tips. First and foremost, please make sure you're getting up close to the species that you are observing. You want to be standing close to it, close enough that you can touch that species in order to take an up close image of it. Please avoid taking photos from a distance. They typically are not sufficient in order for our expert reviewers to tell what species was being looked at. And so in this photo here on the left, this is a great example of a photo that was taken up close. This is an image of burning bush where you can see there's corky wings along the branch stem. So again, a very helpful and distinguishing characteristic that would allow an expert reviewer to know right away that that's what this was. Make sure your images are clear and crisp. Please avoid taking photos that are blurry. That is not helpful as far as our expert reviewers to clearly see what species was being observed. Make sure your camera is focused on the target species that's directly in front of you, not vegetation in the background. Sometimes cameras, especially on mobile devices, can accidentally focus on something in the background rather than what's in the foreground. So just make sure you're slowing down and ensuring that your camera is taking the appropriate photo that you want it to. Very important to keep in mind, make sure that you are photographing a species' distinguishing characteristics. This allows our expert reviewers to verify the species identification and differentiate it from potential lookalikes. An optional thing to keep in mind is to show the scale or the size of a species. So if you would like to, you can include something in your image that helps to show that scale. Something like your hand, a coin, or a ruler all work well for this purpose. So here's an image of someone with their hand holding a burning bush. And so again, it's helping to show the size of that part of the plant. For this year and other years where we've held the scavenger hunt, we do have winners of the event that we select. This year, there will be 3 individuals that will be selected as the winners of the 2025 Invasive Species Scavenger Hunt. Each of those individuals will receive a prize package of outdoor gear and an invasive species field guide. So to qualify as a prize winner, you'll need to do each of the following things. Get outside during the month of August and visit 1 or more natural areas in Pennsylvania. Please search in these areas for the 5 plants that are listed on this year's species checklist. Then, based on your findings, report at least 1 present or not detected record to iMapInvasives for each species. So you should have at least 5 reports that are submitted to iMapInvasives. And certainly, of course, if you want to, report more data than just 5 records, that would be, that would be really good as well. During your reporting process to iMapInvasives, make sure that you're tagging each presence or not detected record to the Invasive Species Scavenger Hunt project. Participants can qualify as prize winners even if you don't observe any of the species on the event checklist and only report not detected data. And this is because the reason why we give away prizes for this event is to encourage people to participate, to get out there, to search for these species, to learn more about them and how to identify them. That is really what we are rewarding, not necessarily what you end up finding or not, because you may be in an area where these species just are not present. And that's actually a really good thing. But again, we want to encourage people to get out, raise their awareness of these species, how to identify them, and if they are present in the landscape, reports for them to iMapInvasives are certainly very appreciated. So winners will be selected at the end of September on September 30th and notified via email by an iMapInvasives administrator. So in years past, we've gotten a series of questions that usually get asked every year that we host this event. And so I wanted to go through some of those frequently asked questions in case any of you that are listening today maybe have a similar question. So first question, will this webinar be available as a recording? Yes, this webinar is being recorded and it will be available and shared with all registrants via email afterwards. How do I gain access to the online guide or story map that I'm using here today as part of my training that highlights the species checklist and related information about iMapInvasives? So all registrants of today's webinar will receive an email that has a link to this story map. So look for that a little bit later on. Should I report a finding to iMapInvasives if I'm unsure of the species identification? Absolutely, yes. Participants should report all findings of target species to iMapInvasives, even if you're unsure of the species identification. Again, remember at the beginning of this training, we talked about how you do not have to be an expert or any kind of special training. As long as you're interested in learning and participating, that's what we're most concerned about. So when you're reporting your findings to iMapInvasives, please just take your best guess and label your report as such. All submissions will be expert verified at the conclusion of this event. And for your reference, when that expert review process happens, submissions with correct species IDs will be marked as confirmed in iMapInvasives. Incorrect IDs will be changed to the appropriate invasive species name or deleted if the species is deemed to be native or non-invasive. Should I search for a species in an area where it hasn't already been found? Yes, participants should search for all 5 target species in natural areas across Pennsylvania. Documented occurrences in iMapInvasives simply indicate where these species have already been found. However, emerging populations may be present in other areas of the state that have not yet been documented. So that's why it's important to be searching all across Pennsylvania. Do I need to take a photo of the target species I observe? Yes, you do. Participants must include at least one photo of an observed species for each finding submitted to iMapInvasives. And when possible, participants are encouraged to include up to 5 images per report, especially if using the online database or Survey123 app to report your submissions. Again, remembering that the iMapInvasives mobile app currently only allows one photo to be added per report. If logging a not detected or absence finding, do I need to include a photo? No, photos are not required for not detected submissions. However, participants may choose to include a photo of the surveyed area in their report. I don't see the Invasive Species Scavenger Hunt project as an option in my iMapInvasives mobile app. Where is it? So to have the Invasive Species Scavenger Hunt project show up in your mobile app, you first need to ensure that you are a member of the project by requesting membership via the iMapInvasives online database. And as you'll remember, that is something we've already highlighted throughout this training and is available as reference in this story map. So once you request membership, wait for an email from an iMapInvasives administrator that lets you know that you are now a project member. Once you get that notification, log into the Preferences section of your mobile app, tap the Retrieve IMAP List button, and then add the project to your app. If you have any questions about this, you can also watch the following section of a video tutorial that we have available online that highlights this process for you. When can I expect my invasive species findings to be reviewed and verified by an expert? So after submission to iMapInvasives, all participant data will be expert verified at the beginning of September, with some submissions possibly being reviewed sooner. Am I able to view my submissions or submissions from others during the event? Yes, you certainly can. Participants can look at their own submissions or reports from other participants by using a special tool in the iMapInvasives online database called the Filter Records tool. That specific information is listed here in the story map. So if that's something you'd like to do, please just reference this part of the guide for more details on that. And I will mention when you are looking up submissions for the scavenger hunt for this year, make sure that you are turning on that unconfirmed data layer because as soon as data is submitted to iMapInvasives, it is going to be listed as unconfirmed because it's not yet been expert vetted. Should I report an invasive species that is not included on the event checklist? Yes, participants can report any invasive species to iMapInvasives during the scavenger hunt or anytime afterwards. However, only species on the event checklist should be tagged to the 2025 Invasive Species Scavenger Hunt project. If I find a target species, should I remove it or manage it somehow? So participants can choose to remove or manage a target species that you find in a natural area if landowner permission is granted. However, it is advised to first have an expert verify the species ID prior to any management actions to ensure that the species is not a native lookalike. Additionally, proper and effective management guidelines should be followed as directed by Penn State Extension, Pennsylvania DCNR, or another trusted source. I am a member of the PA iMapInvasives project on iNaturalist. Can I report my findings there? No, the PA iMapInvasives project on iNaturalist and the Pennsylvania iMapInvasives database are two separate entities and do not automatically share information with one another. So for this event, please make sure you're reporting your findings directly into iMapInvasives. You can also report your data to iNaturalist, but again, make sure you are submitting your data directly to IMAP in order to qualify for this event. Finally, I have a question about the scavenger hunt. Who do I contact? All questions related to this year's scavenger hunt event should be directed to myself, Amy Jewett, by emailing me or giving me a phone call. So that wraps up today's webinar training. Thank you so much for being here and your interest in participating in this year's event. If you have any questions, again, make sure you reach out to me. I'm happy to be your resource. And with that, we'll wrap things up. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.